Welcome in everyone. Today we're going to go over 10 tips to help you play squad. These tips can be helpful for anybody new to the game or someone just looking to see if there's anything else they could be adding to their gameplay. So if you're new or you want updates on new videos coming out, be sure to hit the subscribe button, leave a like, drop a comment down below with any tips you might want to see in a new video, and let's get to it. The first tip I'm going to list here is something that everybody should know, however, not everyone pays a lot of attention to. And that is the vehicle list, which you can find on any given layer by hitting caps lock and then hitting the vehicle icon in the top right of your map. The vehicle list is going to give you specific information about what vehicles are available on that layer to either given team, along with their ticket values, and it can also tell you which vehicles might be amphibious. So all this is pretty important because it narrows down what callouts need to be made on any given layer. Additionally, you'll be able to see the timer for certain vehicles on your team specifically. And because you'll be able to see your timers, you can sometimes predict what the timer is or when to expect enemy vehicles to respawn so you can be better prepared. So my next tip is specific to the game modes Random, Advanced and Secure, and Advanced and Secure. In this game mode, both your team and the enemy team needs to capture flags, typically leaving some middle points as the main area of confrontation. To get there, you need to back cap, which means capping the flags up to those middle points. And it's important to understand how quickly you can cap those flags based on the amount of people you have there. You can tell the speed of your capture by the chevrons up in your top right corner. You can get up to 5 chevrons, which is the fastest speed, whereas 1 chevron is obviously the slowest. If there are no chevrons, then you aren't capping. For back cap flags, typically one person is going to equal a chevron. So you want at least 5 people there to get the cap as quickly as possible so your team can move quickly towards those middle points. However, if you're attacking an enemy flag, you need at least 3 people to initiate that capture and get 1 chevron on that point, which translates to needing about 7 people on that capture point to be able to cap at full speed. This is another tip specific to Random, Advanced and Secure and Advanced and Secure. So as your team is leaving your main and capping flags up to the middle point where you expect to meet the enemy, there's one thing that can actually happen to slow down progress. And that's a double neutral. Double neutral means that you are attacking the enemy position and you have neutralized that flag. Meanwhile, the enemy has attacked your defensive position and neutralized that flag as well. But there is one sneaky way to help continue progress. So while you may be able to maintain your position on the attack point, there may be an enemy presence on your defensive point. But how can you offset this and continue your progression? It's pretty simple. You just need 3 people within radius of cap on the defensive point to actually capture that objective, as long as the attack point remains neutral. Many folks will call this sneak capping. It's basically where you send those 3 guys in not to fight, but just to get in radius, get the cap done, and progress your team forward. Now, if you have any hours in squad, you're probably familiar with what a hab is, which is basically your spawn or the enemy spawn that's set up off a forward operating base. If you're approaching an enemy hab, you can obviously deconstruct it with a shovel, but that can take some time. There's an alternative, which is called proxying the enemy hab. If you proxy an enemy hab, it's going to disable the ability for the enemy to spawn there. You can proxy the hab by having a certain amount of guys within a certain radius of the hab itself. Starting all the way back at 90 meters, you need at least 9 players within that radius to disable the ability for the enemy team to spawn there. This scales down with distance, so at 20 meters, you just need 2 people. And this gives you the ability to approach an enemy hab without worrying about the enemy respawn happening for a little bit at least, and allows you time to get people into position to be able to deconstruct that hab. Now keep in mind, the enemy can do this to your own hab, which brings me to my next tip. Let's say the enemy finds your hab, disables it, digs it down, so you are unable to spawn there. The next thing they're likely to look for is your radio that the hab is built off of. If you're unaware, the radio is worth 20 tickets, so it's a significant value to your team to maintain these and not lose them. So once they have found your radio, they're going to work to deconstruct it. And here's what you can do that not everyone is aware of. Once the enemy team digs down the radio or destroys the radio enough, it goes on a bleed timer. The fob bleed out time is 75 seconds. Before those 75 seconds are up, you have 2 options. You can either dig up the radio and restore the condition of the radio so that you can continue to use the radio, or perhaps you sneak in and finish digging down the radio, completely deleting it from the map and the game, and you end up saving yourself 20 tickets. So the point is that you don't actually have to dig up the radio and restore it, and then dig it back down to delete it to save the 20 tickets. You just dig it down. So if it's on bleed and you have no way of protecting it, sneak somebody in, dig down the radio, save the 20 tickets. One important tip for any member of the squad is to make sure that logistics vehicles don't stay near radios. Because to set up a radio, you have to have the logistics vehicle within a certain radius. It's often that the logistics vehicle just gets left there after you've dumped your supply, giving a pretty good giveaway to enemies as to where that radio is by having a big truck parked next to it. So whether you're leading or if you're just a member of a squad, take it upon yourself to actually move the logistics vehicle. But let's go one step further. You need to be careful where you move it. First of all, you don't necessarily want to move it closer to the Hab. You may give away the position of the Hab itself. Maybe you'll get closer to an enemy objective. Within a couple hundred meters, the enemy may then be able to hear the LOGI truck, giving away your position. So I typically recommend to move the LOGI away from both the radio and the Hab. One extra tip is to actually try to make sure that you turn the vehicle. Don't just drive in a straight line. There's a lot of times where more advanced players will look at the direction that the logistics vehicle is facing and then follow a line behind that logistics truck to try to find the radio. So when you're going to park the logistics truck, just try to make a slight turn or angle the vehicle so that it is not in a direct line from the radio. In addition to being able to see the vehicle list on the map, you can also make some general toggles and changes to how your map appears. For example, you can toggle the visibility of spawns or fob radio marks. You can also make it so that when you see other players on the map, you can get an indication of what kit they are. You can change the grid line opacity. You can also go in and change the scaling of icons. There's a couple other options here, but ultimately this is just about customizing your map experience. While I'm typically a fan of more information, I don't typically toggle these off unless there's just something I can't see. In addition to these map settings, under the general game settings, you also have other options to control what you're seeing. For example, you can change where your compass is. You can actually move it to the top and put a background behind it. You can also alter name tag opacity and name tag scale when you're in the game. You can make tweaks to things like SL marker visibility and FTL marker visibility. Just helpful options you have control over depending on what your preference may be. The next tip applies to orientation with your compass. 0 on your compass is always going to point north. 90 is east, 180 is south, and 270 is west. If you put any time to squad, you know that communication, callouts, and things like that are extremely important for how this game operates. So it's helpful to know this because it's going to bridge the gap between different styles of callouts and different information being thrown at you, especially in a firefight. Now, if you find yourself as a fire team leader, a squad leader, or even command, you may want to make this adjustment to your settings. Under settings, controls, and then voice and command, you can actually change or add an alternative key to where you ping. In squad, you have multiple types of pings. As an SL, you have the option to defend, construct, move, observe, attack, or set up a POI. Depending on how many buttons you can set up as an alternative, like on your mouse, this could be really useful for speeding up some of your communications to your squad or fire team. I typically set the observe button to one of my mouse keys. This gives me a much faster way of being able to communicate a specific direction or get everyone's attention. This next tip is about changing your kit and saving some ammo. If you want to change your kit, it's best to typically do that at an ammo box. That's because an ammo box is geared towards refunding actual ammo points based on the things that you have in your kit currently or the things that you have left. Whereas if you spawn on a Hab with a new kit, you're actually not going to carry over any of the supply that you had. Therefore, you're going to have to spend more ammo points to actually refill your ammo and supplies before you can move out into the battle. While some of these tips may be more helpful for beginners, I hope this added something to your gameplay in squad. If you're new, be sure to hit the subscribe button, leave a like, drop a comment down below with any suggestions for future videos, and I'll catch you all next time.